Welcome back to the show. Well, it's taken 7 years, but I've finally reached episode 200. I want to say thanks to you for traveling with me on this journey. So now, with great pride and a great sense of accomplishment, I can say, this is episode 200 with Paul Everitt, where we talk about his adventure building a bike car and cycling it across Canada. My name is Paul Schmid. I'm the host of this podcast, and I interview explorers from around the globe to bring you their exciting stories. These are people that dream big, break out of their comfort zones, and take on ambitious pursuits. Let's start the show, and let me introduce Paul. Back in 2006, while snowboarding in the French Alps, he met some backpackers and became fascinated with their lifestyle and tales of travel and adventure. Soon after, he quit his job and spent a year working and traveling Australia. A few years later, while backpacking and volunteering in Central America, he decided to retire the backpack and begin traveling in other ways. First, he built a bike car that seats 2 cyclists in the front and 2 in the back. Its maiden voyage was from the UK to Italy, and after some modifications, he cycled it across Canada and partway down the west coast of the US. Since then, he has gone on to do many more adventures, including kayaking the Inside Passage. You can learn more about Paul and his adventures at going-solo.co.uk. Paul Everitt, welcome to the Pursuit Zone.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Paul, where did you grow up?
Small fishing town called Grimsby. Official name is Great Grimsby. It's on the northeast coast of England.
You met the backpackers and you decided to quit your job. What was the job that you were doing?
I was self-employed, plumber, tiler, gas engineer by trade back then. I needed a change in my life. But it wasn't because of the job. I love my job and I actually still do my job now. Everyone around me seemed to be traveling and I'd been focused on work for the past 7 years, hardly taking holidays, working 6 days a week kind of thing. I just wanted to, have a crack at it before it was too late.
Did you quit immediately or did you take some time to think out a plan?
After the snowboarding skiing trip, I literally got back within a week. I started putting things into place. I actually bought my tickets before I had any visas set in place. So it could be a rookie mistake that, you kind of want to get your visas in place if you're going to work somewhere prior, because it's obviously a big commitment. A lot of money could be lost. But yeah, just within a week, got all that sorted out. Then I started the process of the visas, and then I had an apprentice at the time. So his apprenticeship was coming to an end within a 6-month period. So I tied it with him completing his apprenticeship. So he then could inherit the business and then continue for himself. So I wasn't basically letting him down. When you got to Australia, what kind of jobs were you doing down there? Well, I didn't work for the first part. I was finding my feet. I went to Canada first for 3 months, and then Fiji, and then Australia. So I had a 6-month period where I was just enjoying myself. But it got a little bit tame and a bit boring. I wasn't a typical backpacker, so I actually did crave the work. So then I moved to a place called Adelaide. I was working in demolition, so keeping it close to what I know within the construction trade. Industry and I went from there really, and then I slowly made my way from Adelaide to Perth for a bit and settled down. So the last chunk of Australia, I actually just worked straight through. Now you eventually end up in Central America. I was curious, where were you and what kind of volunteering were you doing? This is a few years after, so this is about 3 years later. I'd made my way back to Canada in this time, and I just needed a change again. Just I think you get to a point when you've done something time and time again, you do need that physical and mental challenge. So a friend of mine was actually doing volunteer work down there, and she said, come down and have a crack at it yourself. So I said, why not? So went down to Costa Rica and in Cocobado National Park, and they was doing turtle research and jaguar. I mean, I love my wildlife, but it was that side of things was beyond me. So I ended up just building bridges and helping out around on trails and stuff, mainly for a month. And yeah, it was interesting. So you mentioned you weren't like the typical kind of backpacker, but what was it that you liked about that kind of backpacker lifestyle? I've heard all the stories from my friends. My brother's been traveling in that sense prior to me, and they had like a great time. But I wasn't a big drinker. I wasn't a party person. And all I seemed to see was people having the party scene. It was, especially in Australia, it was drinking, partying, and you missed all the things in between, I found. So that's why I went against the grain there a little bit. So typical backpacking, I just felt like I was following the herd, following the rest of the pack of sheep. So that's why I went against the grain and found my own way in a way. And I think that's what I enjoyed it about the most, was actually disappearing by myself. I'm quite a solitary kind of lonesome person in general anyway. That was where I got my enjoyment, and not being part of the pack.
So as you mentioned, it's after a while, it's time for a change. So you decide to hang the backpack up and start exploring in other ways with other modes of transportation. So then the idea of this bike car happens. How did this idea come about?
Well, it started off actually in the national park in Costa Rica. Big thunderstorm one night, and I was doodling and I was drawing, and I was trying to figure out how to just keep going and traveling in the way I've kind of slowly adapted into, that solitary kind of way. And I started doodling, and I liked the idea of cycling because I met a few cyclists who were going across Australia, and they blew my mind. So I thought that was just absolutely cracking, people cycling across Australia. But going back to 2006, when I first started traveling, I was in Banff, and I met a bunch of lads. I can't honestly tell you the name off the top of my head right now, but they longboarded across Canada. It took me back to that moment, and I was like, well, if these guys can longboard across countries and these other guys can cycle across countries, what can I do? And I wasn't a cyclist. I hadn't been on a bicycle at that point since I was a teenager. But I liked the idea of being on some kind of self-propelled. I think it was a very natural and fitting way to actually see the world, your own speed, your own pace, you're not driving past everything. So I started doodling on this thundery night, and next thing you know, I've drawn a 4-person bicycle. Bit crackers, bit different, didn't know if it would work. I took a bit of inspiration from a UK TV program from a childhood. It was called The Chuckle Brothers. They had a 4-wheeled bicycle back then as well. It kind of developed from there, and next thing you know, I'm back in England and I'm starting the process of building the bike.
So obviously, I don't think you're going to bikecars.com and ordering a kit to just bolt together. So nope. I mean, how does explain the process? You got to, first of all, you have to design this out, and I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I guess I have a general idea of how a regular bicycle works, but I mean, how do you even have you do have a trade background, but what do you have to learn, I guess, to even know how to take your first step to build this?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to start. I looked at it this way. I thought, right, make it as simple as possible. That way, if anything ever goes wrong, it can be easily fixed. There's no need to complicate it. So I looked at a simple frame. I drew out several different types of frame. I actually had one that kind of pivoted, like was swinging motion in the middle. So that's how you would steer it, but it was just complicated and it was just daft. So the simple mechanism I got, frame was what you'll probably see in the picture that I'll supply. It's just simple boxed aluminum for you guys, tube welded together, and then just simple 4 wheels on it. And then with my plumbing background, I bent the aluminum pipe with my plumbing tool, my bending pipe. I don't know. It was complicated at the start. It was a 9-month period from return and home to actually leaving on the trip, but it took me 6 months to build the bike. A lot of fails, a lot of things were wrong, but every time I took it out for a test drive, I got it the next step to being correct. It wasn't the best design. A lot of people laughed at it, but that's what encouraged me to actually keep going and make it actually work. It was, trial and error. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears did generally go into it. Okay,
so handfuls of iterations later, you've got it roadworthy. But can you describe to us a little bit about it? Like, what should we know? Like, its overall dimensions and weight and so on.
Picture a small car, something like either a Toyota Yaris or like a little Fiat car. Really small car, 4 wheels, like I said. And then it was 4 seats. So the left side of the bike had 14 individual gears, and they only powered 1 wheel on their side. And then the right-hand side, again, they had 14 gears to choose from, and they only powered their wheel on the rear. So there was no differential. I didn't know how to make a differential. Looking back at it now, if I took the time and I knew how to and asked for help, a differential would have made the world of difference, because then if there was one person cycling it, you're controlling and powering two wheels. Whereas if it was just me by myself pedaling it, I'm only pedaling one wheel and dragging the other side in a sense, so it wasn't the best design. The only people at the front could control it. So when there was 4 people on it, you had to synchronize, you had to feel the rhythm and get in motion, which wasn't too difficult. And then, one person steered it at the front, just on a pair of handlebars, which was a simple go-kart steering mechanism that I found on the internet.
And the people in the back, they pedal as well?
Yeah, all 4 people pedaled. So the trip from England to Italy, so I started in my hometown, Grimsby, and we went north to a place called Hull. That's where we got the ferry over to the mainland. And that was the biggest test of it all. Like, we broke down on the first day, which should have only been a 4-hour bicycle ride to the ferry. We broke down 7 times. And there were quite fairly big breakdowns. And we actually needed some welding doing, and we found somewhere we could actually get the welding done just before the ferry. I think if I knew a bike engineer, there would be a lot of changes to be done on it that would make it what it is. But then, like I said, all the fails and all the people with the negative comments were actually got us going, got us moving forward. So yeah, I mean, it's 4 people, I ain't got a clue what we're doing, and just somehow we winged it all the way to Italy on it.
Yeah. Well, if you make it too perfect, though, then it takes all the adventure and the fun and all the stories now that you have out of it.
Definitely. And I think building something as well from the beginning, you get to understand the process of the bike. So I knew nothing about bicycles, actually, other than 2 pedals and 2 wheels, and you just pedal. I didn't know how to maintain, how to fix or any of that. But by the time the 6 months of building it and the start date had happened, I knew that bike really well. So each noise, I was like, right, that's going to be something falling off. And so I could stop, predict, and fix. It's like that. And there wasn't really a single day. Well, that's a lot. There was a handful of days where nothing ever happened, but nearly every day something did happen. So them days where things didn't happen, you still constantly worrying. It's like, what is it? But yeah, all the breakdowns, they brought you they gave you some fantastic stories. They gave you some great interactions that you would not normally get on a normal bicycle. So I've cycled across Canada on a normal bicycle as well. They were 2 different, obviously, journeys, but it was by a long shot. Like, the interactions I got on a bike car were phenomenal. Like, I only spent $2,500 in 6 months, and I stayed in places where were just what you couldn't imagine. Where when I went on my normal bicycle, people didn't interact with you as much because it's just another person on the bicycle. So it was quite a really great way of actually seeing the world was on the bike car.
You break down 7 times on the way to the ferry, but yet you don't get discouraged. You guys keep going. And I think the original plan was to go all the way to Istanbul, but that you guys didn't make it that far. But before you tell us the rest of the story, can you, tell us who was on the team with you that was part of this 4-person bike car trip on your way to Istanbul?
Yeah, so there was Neil from Canada, there was Dan from Australia, there was Mel from Canada, and then there was Christine. She came on a little bit at the end, towards the end of the actual trip. She was from Canada as well. So Dan I've known for a while. Neil just reached out one day and said, that's crazy, I want to join in. And Mel I met traveling as well. So, it was all people who were, well, none of them have ever done anything like it.
They were all UK based at the time?
No, they all flew in. They all flew in from wherever they were at the time. We all hung out in Grimsby for a few weeks, getting to know each other, getting to understand the bicycle together so they could learn a little bit about it as well. So it wasn't just all on me.
So once you get onto the mainland of Europe, then what's happening? Are you guys still having all these failures, or did you get things worked out?
No, it was daily failures. Like I said, there was things that was being tested. If it wasn't the bike, it was actually the relationship between the 4 of us. There was a lot of things that I didn't expect, and I guess they didn't expect as well. So there was a lot of there was a lot of things that just needed narrowing down. So the breakdowns could trigger certain emotions as well. That's the reason why the trip actually ended a little bit early. Like you mentioned previously. it's a trip that sometimes it's hard for me to talk about because of I see it as a failure in a way, that trip, because it didn't get to where it needed to be. And when the trip finished eventually in Italy, I was at a bit of a down in myself. Something that I've actually never talked about, and I'm happy to share with you because I think it's quite important these days. I actually tried to commit suicide on that trip because of all the emotions that were happened on that journey. I got a dry bag, placed it over my head, and tried to suffocate myself because I felt like a failure because of all the breakdowns, not just because of the bike, but the people I was with. So that trip, it's a hard one for me to talk about. I learned a lot about myself on that journey, and that's what made me realize I need to do it again. And I've had a fond love for Canada. Canada is one of them places where I've been back to many times, and I thought I needed to discover it. So I decided then was to break down the bike car into from 4-person to a 2-person, so I could make it more personable to myself, but also get to know someone as an individual instead of as a group. So that's what the trip then went from being in Europe as a 4-person to a 2-person in North America.
Wow. Well, that's a really serious topic there, Paul.
Yeah.
We don't usually just get into that kind of discussion in this podcast. So I'm not really prepared to respond, but I'll say that I'm glad you didn't go, nothing happened and you're still here.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I thought I'd talk about it is because it's not stuff like that's not talked about. I think the adventure industry, the community, I've not known anyone to open up about that side of stuff. And so I figured, why not, have a chat and maybe there's somebody else out there who can learn from me or reach out. I feel like it's about helping each other. So, yeah.
I did want to say, though, that even though you think of it as a failure, I mean, that's really how you learn. So it's just part of the process for you to successfully navigate across Canada.
Yeah. So I learned a lot in that, like I said, on that first journey, and it did it set me right in a way. I'm glad I also failed at trying to do what I did, because I wouldn't be here right now. So yeah, to travel across Canada, I mean, the country alone is stunning, but the people are next level. They opened their arms up to me and gave me an experience that, to be honest, really money couldn't buy. And that's also part of the bike car. Me and the bike car now are a different level of bonding, because we've been through so much already. It's hard to just call it it's not really an object. It's a bit more to me than that. I put a lot of, like I say, blood, sweat and tears into it. And what we did and what we saw, it was just, it's not, I'm not going to forget about it ever.
And you gave it a name, right?
Well, I didn't know. It didn't actually have a name for a long time. And I met a family in a place called Tobermory, and they asked what if it had a name, and I was like, no. And I was like, well, it makes a good Priscilla, after Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert kind of thing. And as I went, I kind of warmed to it. And especially when I was going across the prairies, it felt like it, because obviously it's very barren, dusty country in the prairies there. It was at that time of the year. And so, yeah, Priscilla stuck with it, and it kind of definitely suited her. She was definitely a she, she had her moments. And yeah, so Priscilla, the bike car.
So what modifications do you make before you take it to Canada?
I had 5 days, basically. I'd just gone back to France in 2010. I went back to France to another ski season, and I was guiding. And I had 5 days leave to come back home and basically get the bike ready, because it was going to get shipped on a container to go to Canada, but months prior to me getting there. So basically, I got rid of the canopy. So the bike car had a canopy on it, which was just basically a big sail. So it was very useless. You got wet no matter what. So that went. Back 2 seats went. Didn't need them, so I cut the pedals off. Anything that was just not relevant for them 2 people on the rear. And then it had a trailer on tow. What I decided to do was get the trailer box and put that box on top of the bike car itself. So now it's gone from having 6 wheels to basically having 4 all, and it's just narrow, compact little bike. Well, kind of. So that was it. I mean, it was a few modifications, chopping and cutting and a bit of welding, but it was done 5 days and it was ready.
I guess you put it in a container, it goes across the ocean, gets into Canada. Where do you start in Canada?
Halifax, Nova Scotia. It was the easiest location to send the bike to in a container. A lot of people in general who go across Canada, if cycling, or go from west to east because of the winds. But I decided to go against the winds, and I definitely felt that all the way across. But it was logistically the easiest place for me to start on the actual bike itself.
When you start off in this adventure across Canada, was your plan to do the whole thing yourself, or did you think that, I'm going to try to meet people and have people join me along the way?
I wanted people to be a part of it. I wanted not just one or two. I wanted as many people. And I had about 50 people, if I remember right, jumping on and off. If it was for an hour, a day, a week, there was, people would help out. Hitchhikers, friends, other, strangers, people you just meet throughout the days, and it was the best way of doing it because I wasn't restricting myself to a group, and that's what I felt like failed in that first trip across Europe, was being in a group. I don't think I'm that kind of person who knows how to be in that situation.
So what kind of distance are you able to cycle each day in this?
Well, that's a good one. Some days it could be 20K. On average, you're looking about 65K. Good days were 80, 90. Biggest day by myself was, I think it was about 111 kilometers by myself. Biggest day with another person on the bike was 130 kilometers. 100K days did happen, but it was rare, back to back as such. But it was, it depended on the weather, the road conditions, and if anyone actually joined me. And
what happens when you hit a big hill going up?
North American roads, I'm pretty sure it's the same in America. You're going along and there's a hill coming, but then you get that pre-warning because the road it goes from single file to double file if you're going uphill, doesn't it? You get that white sign. It's quite iconic going across Canada anyway. And you would see that and it would break your heart because you knew you had like at least 2 kilometers uphill. So it was pretty disheartening. And some depend on condition, and some I would just cycle up at ease. I did quite a lot of them by myself. If I couldn't cycle it, I'd just jump off and push it. I'd jump out and have the handlebars and just slog it up the hill as quick as I could. Just didn't think about it, just got it done.
I've read through your blog, many of your blog postings, and it seems like you met quite a lot of friendly people along the way in Canada, and that were lending you a hand when you needed it. And did you end up able to sleep under these people's roofs, or did they let you throw your tent in their backyard? Or what I'm trying to get to is how many times are you out sleeping in your wild camping in your tent, or versus some other kind of accommodation that you were offered?
Again, it varied. It depended where I was. There was a lot of sleeping under the stars in the tent. If you go into a small town, without fail, someone will be like, you can sleep in the yard. Then once people have invited you onto the land, it'd be like, wow, do you know what, just sleep in the house. So all depending on who you would meet, but it was almost 50-50. I'd slept in hotels, motels. People would pay for them for me, so out of goodwill gesture. So I don't know. It was a huge mix from start to finish. I never knew, and I never set anything in stone where I was going to stay each night because of the unpredictability of the bike breaking, the weather. I just didn't know what I would cover each day. So I never put a day end destination. So literally could sleep anywhere.
Somewhere along the way, you picked up a radio so you could listen to music. What kind of music are you listening to?
Really bad Canadian music. It was, I don't know what was on at the time, but I tell you what, England does really well is radio. I'm adamant on it. There's very little commercials on it, but the Canadian radio stations were shocking. But you'd only get it between small towns. So for a good part of it, I actually ended up ditching the radio. I did ditch it on purpose. I used it as a break one day on a hill. And as I started cycling away, I forgot about it. So it didn't last too long.
Oh. Yeah, I think the U.S. probably has the same crummy radio stations.
Yeah, I do. It is. Music does play a big part only in one of my trips, and that was in the Inside Passage. I had a live Lumineers concert on my phone, which was bizarre. And that's really the only time I've ever appreciated music, where on the other trips, I've just not bothered. I like to always listen and hear as well. So I would no headphones, something like that, because I want to know what the traffic's doing on the road. I want to hear what's coming up behind me. I had mirrors, but I'd also like to hear, just to be a bit more road smart, basically.
So you're driving, or you're cycling the bike car on the shoulder of the road? You're not on the main lane, right?
No, well, sometimes. It was road legal for the most part of Canada, I found. But yeah, I would be in the hard shoulder. That's what I like about North America. The US and Canada, they really cater for basically the hard shoulders is another whole lane in itself, isn't it? So most of the time I was in there, no one ever said anything to me. Sometimes, obviously, it could be just a meter wide, the hard shoulder, and then gravel. So I would just ride my half on the tarmac, and then the other half I'd just drag in the gravel. And then if needs be, if it was a quiet stretch of the road, I would just go on the road. And then if I saw something in my mirror, I'd just pull over and get out of the way. I wanted to be as courteous as possible to motorized vehicles, just so I didn't upset them and they had no reason to get angry at me.
You make it into Banff. What do you like about Banff?
Friends. I had some good friends there, good memories. And yeah, it was the first place I kind of went in 2006 when I, left England as backpacking. It was like it's just a happy spot. And I had my friend Adam, a little Mexican guy. Well, he's not Mexican, he's Italian, but he looks a Mexican. He joined me, and he's the most unhealthiest person I probably know. And he blew my mind. He's like, I want to come and join you. So he cycled in from Canmore to Banff, which is only about 27k, 30k. And he was knackered. But I was so happy that I got to share that moment with him. I had a week off in Banff, and then he turns around and goes, I'll go to Golden with you, which was 170k away, I believe. And I was like, are you sure? And he goes, yeah, I can do it with you. And I was like, if you think you can, we'll do it together. And I wouldn't have got there without him. His attitude was just phenomenal. He had a good crack, a good joke. Even when it got difficult, he made he just knew how to put a smile on my face. And, so yeah, it was good to have that moment with him. It's a fond area, Banff. If you've ever been, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah, I've been there twice, and I love Banff. I've been up there twice they have a mountain film and book festival in November. Yes. I've been there for that 2 times, and I just love that. It's just a cool little town. It's just so...
It's opening. Like, people, again, people there went out of the way to make sure I was safe, and well, and another friend who I didn't actually know at the time, a guy called Cricket, he opened his door to me. He's like, right, I got a garage, put the bike in there and stay with me. So I ended up staying with Cricket for some time. And, like a complete stranger who now I class as a good friend. So Banff, yeah, there's really good memories there, and also stunning country.
How was it to keep up your motivation day to day to keep on cycling across Canada?
Food was the big motivation every day. If I ran out of food, I wouldn't want to cycle. And that happened a couple of times. But going back to Banff was actually a place that I just wanted to get to. And if I didn't get past Banff, I kind of didn't care. My goal was the whole country. But inside my heart was getting to Banff. That was the most important thing in a way, because I just wanted to see my mates. So that was a huge motivation each day. Bad days, especially in the prairies, it was just like the headwinds were shocking. I was going backwards half the time as well. And so that was key, is to have a goal. And that was really the only time when like I said, I don't have an end destination as such, but that was each night. But that was my end destination in 2 months' time as such. So if it wasn't for stuff like that, and then another person I actually met cycling, a lady called Nikki, she helped me through the prairies. She motivated me on her bicycle. Because I did the prairies all by myself pretty much. And if she wasn't there, I'd probably wouldn't have made it as well. It's amazing what goes through your mind. You have a lot of time to think cycling, and sometimes it's good, but then sometimes it's bad. You've got to have a good head on yourself when it gets into these barren areas, or you're going to get stuck and you're going to quit. I mean, I probably quit 5-6 times before I even got to Banff as well. You know, like, there's no doubt about it. I think you need them moments to realize you need to stop sometimes and just appreciate where you are in that moment.
Well, what do you mean when you say quit?
Quit. Like, I can't do it. I just can't go anymore. It was too hard. It was too difficult. You know, that hill's just too much. I'm just going to stop. So I would literally, I would try and aim to get up a hill, but if I couldn't, I'd just stop and then I'll just wait. I'd throw a tantrum, you know, like inside. I'd let out all my emotions as such, and then I can carry on now. And it really is easy to quit on some things because if you don't let them emotions out, like I say, they're just going to build up, and then you are just going to end that journey on that spot. And again, I don't think people talk about that side of it. It's not easy. There is all these internal feelings going on that just do end the trips too soon, you know? So, yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I hear you. I know what you're saying. It's almost like, I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but it's like the Instagram photos and all, what you see. It's so easy to get pulled in to want to do these types of adventures because you see the photographs and you think, oh man, that must be so amazing and so much better than what I'm doing now. But it's not the reality of being in the moment out there. No,
I mean, I think Instagram is terrible, isn't it, these days? Because there's a lot of stuff on there staged and faked. You know, they've driven to places, took a photograph, make it look absolutely beautiful, but you don't get them beautiful shots doing these trips. You can, it's just not what it is. You put in so much energy throughout the day to get to that end destination for that night. You're exhausted constantly. I was probably burning 6,000 calories a day. You know, so sometimes I would be grumpy if I didn't get my food. You know, food's a big thing for me when I'm doing these trips, and well, for a lot of people it is as well. So I say anything can trigger you to quit. You know, I remember there was one day cycling along. I did run out of food, but I knew there was a town coming up, and I knew there was a subway coming up, and I was thirsty, hungry. I had a sign on the back of my the bike car saying "Feed me," basically, if you have any spare food. And someone stopped on the side of the road ahead of me, and they didn't stop to talk to me, but they left an apple juice. I remember cycling up to it, looking at this apple juice on the side of the road, and I picked it up. And was it apple juice, or did someone just pee in a bottle? You know, and I looked at it, and I cracked open the top seal, and it went. You know, the seal cracked. So I knew it wasn't someone's urine, and it tasted so good. It was one of the best things. So I've had my drink, but now I needed food. And because the bike car took so long to get anywhere, 15 minutes in a car would be an hour and a half, say, on the bike car. And you see, kept seeing these 15 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go signs. And I think it was 10 minutes to go. And I looked down ahead of me about 100 meters as I'm cycling. And there was a cheeseburger in a wrapper. And I was so fixed on it. I cycled so hard, put so much energy in it. I thought, wow, someone just left me a cheeseburger on the side of the road. I went down to pick it up, and it was a used, dirty nappy. And I was horrified. And that broke me, you know. And it is the simplest things and the weirdest things can just change your day for the worse, or sometimes actually for the better. But yeah.
Oh man, that's gross.
Yeah, it was. So I didn't eat it. I stressed that I did not eat it. Yeah. But I did get my Subway though later that day. But it was, it's there's a lot. Trips aren't simple. They're not easy. There's a lot of fail. There's a lot of change. And anyone who says or glorifies it differently, they've not been doing it right or been cheating. So there's more to it than most people ever let on. I got a laugh out of the interaction that you had, I guess, in Kamloops with some woman who thought you were like a homeless person or something. Yeah, it would happen a lot. People used to think I was homeless all the time because basically I had a really scruffy poncho and I was covered in oil because I just fixed the bike or something, and I could sit outside, say like Tim Hortons or any other coffee shop as such. And I would sit outside and I'd just drink my coffee and I'd take my hat off my head. Next thing you know, people are chucking money in your hat. And I'm like, excuse me. I made about $30 outside of one place, and people give me gift cards. I just thought, yeah, the crackers, I'm fine. I've got my bike there, but the bike car, it looked scruffy. It looked like you got that trolley appeal where there's bags hanging off it here and there. So it's people would, I guess I am homeless in a sense, but yeah, it's not a life that I've ever been that way in life. I've been very lucky. So I've not had to beg or borrow as such. So it was a really interesting way of viewing that from an outside perspective.
Well, I guess you eventually make your way, I think, into Vancouver.
I dodge Vancouver. I completely dodge it. Basically, you leave Kamloops and you're heading west. You get to a place called Cache Creek. From there, you can go basically say south. Yeah, that just takes you to Vancouver. Or you can go the back way, and that takes you to Whistler. I wanted to go to Whistler on the bike car anyway. I didn't want to go through Vancouver, and then I wanted to get the ferry across to Vancouver Island. So the best way of doing this was from Cache Creek, go to a place called Duffy Lake Road. And that then takes you through the back way, Pemberton, finally Whistler, and then down to Horseshoe Bay to get the ferry across. Completely avoid Vancouver. When that was all I wanted to do, was just avoid it. I didn't want the hassle of cycling there. But Duffy Lake Road, oh my God, it's probably one of the worst stretches on the entire trip in a way. Switchbacks, very little hard shoulder, very barren, ups and downs, cold, aggressive drivers. It's probably some of the stretch where I had the worst drivers as well. But somehow I managed to get through it. I lost my water. It fell off the back of my bike as I'm flying down the road at about 80 kilometers an hour. So I lost my water, begging for water again and food on my sign on the back of the bike. One guy stops me. He goes, I ain't got no water, but I've got a beer. So I took his beer off him. And then, like I say, I ended up in Whistler eventually. And I ended up staying in Whistler for about, I think it was 5 nights all up.
Eventually you head south and you cross the border into the U.S. But I read in your blog you had some interesting, you had a lot of interactions with law enforcement along the way, and it seemed like most of it was pretty positive until this moment when you're about to cross the U.S. What happens?
From Vancouver Island, I went back over to the mainland, so I'm twice, and you get the ferry over, and then you kind of have to go through a bit of, say, like southern part of Vancouver. I got detained on the side of the road for hours by this cop. He took my passport off me, everything, because he said that the bike car's not roadworthy, it's illegal. And I'm like, I've just gone across your country. I'm literally heading into America now. Like, let me be America's problem. Like, do you want to be that guy? And yeah, he wasn't having any of it. Detained me for hours. Finally, his superior officer as such got in touch, and he's like, just get rid of him, get him gone. You're wasting too much of police time. So they gave him a passport back, and then I went to the border, America, and I was kind of dreading it a little bit because I chose a quieter border, which is where I think a lot of the truckers go through. It's a bit further east than the main one. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. And I'm going through there, and all of a sudden, all the officers, the border patrol, they just look at me, they stop me, and I'm thinking I look like a scruffy, drug taking hobo in a way. Like I was very, very homeless looking. I know I shouldn't really put that label on it, but I just didn't look like the type of person who should be crossing the border in a way. And they detained me, but for 15 minutes basically, and it was to talk to me. They wanted to know all about the journey, where I was going. They wanted to look around the bike because they just wanted to know about the bike. They were absolutely phenomenal. They made me feel really welcome. So it was one of the best border control experiences I've ever had.
What was your experience? So you cross in Washington State. I guess you're heading towards Seattle, I suppose. What's your experience? Bellingham. Okay. I've never been there, but I heard it's a cool little outdoor town.
Yeah, it's a fun town. I met up with one of the old managers I used to work for in New Zealand. He lived there. So, yeah, I went and hung out there for a little bit. My first day I got there, though, the bike got a bunch of stuff robbed off it. So America kind of had been this great, phenomenal trip, really no issues, other than the border control as such, the police officer before the border. But getting into America, once I was in there, America seemed a little bit different. And I think there was a bit more on edge, a little bit. And I got robbed. A bit further down the road, I got run off the road by a car. I had some guy pull a rifle out on me. People chucking things at me. So it was all of a sudden America. It was just a different experience. More people were more. They lost the patience with me, despite me trying to do my best not to be in there as a hindrance in their way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let me just preface this by, this was 2011, right?
Yes, yeah.
So maybe, the mindset has changed in 9 years, but I have my doubts. But I just wanted to say, there's been a few podcasts that I've asked this question to cyclists. Has anybody, when you're cycling through the US, has anybody like thrown anything from you at their car?
Yeah, no, that's where it happened. People were chucking stuff at me.
Yeah. And
objects, drinks and things like that. Like I say, someone pulled out a rifle on me, and I just look over this guy. He's on the other side of the road in a white pickup, and I couldn't help but laugh. I think I was scared. It was a fear laugh, if anything, and I just kept cycling. I don't know. I've seen a lot of America. And I've cycled a lot of America as well on a normal bicycle. I went down the Mississippi on a timber raft, and nothing really. I've never had that experience there either, like as such. So I love America. I think it's a great place to travel. Actually, so much to see and do, and the experiences are quite phenomenal as well. But there was something about maybe that time, that stretch, that didn't get it, didn't like it. I don't know. I can't really it's hard to narrow it down.
Anyhow, those things happen to you. So you decide, heck with it. I'm done. I'm going to end the trip and head back to, I don't know if you go back to the UK or back to Canada or whatever, but
basically, I went back to England. America was a bonus trip anyway. My goal was getting across Canada. So anything after that, it was a bonus joyride, So I'm glad I did it. I would do it again if I could do it, I guess. So I just stored the bike, went on home and focused then on making money and thinking what to do next and where to go next.
What happened to the bike?
Someone borrowed it, and then it went from, where did it go from? I want to say Missouri to Miami, maybe, something like that. So someone took it on another trip. I think they did about 1,000 miles on it. So it did another journey after me. Saw some new stretch. So it had another life. I ain't got a clue where it is now. I'd love to find it again. So it's either being used on the East Coast somewhere, or it's been scrapped and melted down. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, congratulations on making it across Canada 9 years ago.
Thank you.
Almost.
Yeah, 9 years. Yeah.
10-year anniversary next year.
Yeah, basically, 10 years. September would be the 10-year builder, I guess, of it as such. Or is it? No. 10 years is this year, of Europe, isn't it, I guess? Yeah. Anniversary. I've never really thought about that.
Well, you met a lot of inspiring people along the way, looking through your blog. Was it Terry Fox? Was that the name of the guy that ran across Canada?
That's correct. Yeah, he didn't make it. Sadly, he didn't make it all the way because he sadly passed away from cancer, but he got to Thunder Bay. So he's a big inspiration for the Canadians. I think that's the big reason these days why it's very accepted to do journeys across Canada and in that manner, and why people do go out their way to make you feel welcome is up to Terry Fox. Yeah,
I just remember it was probably back in the 80s, there was a television show on about him. And until I read through your blog again, I was like, I totally forgot about that guy.
Yeah, he's a big part of Canada. They do a Terry Fox run each year. He changed a lot of people's opinions, basically, and opened up a lot of people's hearts. So I think if you're going to go across Canada, look into Terry Fox. He's worth researching.
You also met a guy who was, I think his name is Jean Beliveau.
That's correct, yeah.
You met him as he was coming back to his home country of Canada from walking around the world for 11 years.
Yeah. He had 3 months to go, and because he was finishing in Montreal. But 11 years walking around the world. How crazy is that?
Did you have a chance to talk to that guy?
Yeah, I did. It was brief, but it blew my mind, and I can't get my head around that. Like 11 years of just walking. I need work. I miss things like work. Within say a 3-month journey, within a month, all I want to do is just go back to work again. I just love working. So I just don't know how people can do that for that long. It's quite an achievement, but mentally as well, it's a lot to process.
Do you like the work because it gives you purpose or gives you structure to your day?
Yes, both. It gives me a purpose and structure. I like to build my own things. I like that process. I like to use my hands basically, and yeah, it does. It does give me a purpose. It gets me through the hard times. That's for sure. I can take a weekend off and I'll slip mentally a little bit, and going back to work again, it just sets me right. But it gives you that focus and a goal to then go do something else and disappear, go on a bike ride, go kayaking, go rafting. So I think work's quite an important thing. I work now as well to fund my trips. I don't bother with sponsorships. You can put just as much work into them writing emails and get nothing as well.
What was your favorite part of the adventure?
Meeting people. Genuinely was just meeting people. Priscilla gave me that opportunity to see a different side to how to interact with people, on a more personal level, which I've not been used to. That's what I take from it. I mean, all the other stuff was kind of like it was a bit of a bonus, seeing the wildlife, seeing all the nature you'd cycle by each day, and the people was definitely the big part.
Looking back to that ski trip and meeting the backpackers and setting off on a different course in life, do you have any regrets about doing that?
I used to, a little bit. I used to regret leaving because I gave up a lot. I gave up a business, and it took me a long time to get my head around that. I felt like I took the wrong route, but having a trade has given me the ability to work anywhere and everywhere. So I feel like I did do the right thing. It just took me a long time to figure it out. So I'm very grateful. No really regrets. Things happen for a reason, and things developed, and I got through the hard times, which were deep and dark, but I got through them, and somehow, I've been still here, and I'm still plodding on and enjoying myself.
Well, I'm curious about this raft project that you went on to. My understanding is that you made it into Wisconsin. What fascinates me is just the whole start, the whole beginning of the project, the whole idea, and then saying, okay, let's build a raft. I mean, where were you when you were building this raft?
I was building it in St. Paul, but I'm going to go back to Banff in 2011 when I met Cricket, and when I was staying there. One of Cricket's good friends is Ashley, and she's actually an old friend of mine as well. And we was in the bar one night just talking about what am I going to do next, this kind of typical conversation, what's going to happen when you finish. And I started on a napkin, I drew a timber raft, and I was like, I want to go rafting somewhere. And the rest of that trip, that's all I would think about then. Next thing you know, I'm in St. Paul at the St. Paul Yacht Club, and I'm building a timber raft. I basically used old logs that we used for the telegraph poles. A company gave me them, which was great. They had them in storage. And I just spent then about, I think it was 4 days, I think it was off the top of my head. Just building this timber raft on the edge of the Mississippi River.
This is a solo trip?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I would love someone to join me. I invited anyone and everyone on that trip, but no one took the offer up. It was hard work, really hard work. The Mississippi it was slow, like really slow going. I was rowing 10, 12-hour days and probably only achieving a handful of miles. It was just such a slog. And with the raft, I mean, I've never built a timber raft before, but I guess what I should have probably done is sealed the ends of all the timbers somehow, because the timber was so dry, it was just sucking in the water. And this is why, sadly, the trip ended where it did, because the raft got so heavy and waterlogged. It was just getting a bit ridiculous and a bit unsafe to navigate across channels through the locks and dams.
Man, well, at least you gave it a shot.
Oh, no, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved Mississippi. Great people. They're different. They're a different breed of Americans for sure, but they're the best. They went out their way to give me a great experience. So yeah, I can't complain one bit.
Looking at your Instagram, it looks like you do some painting, and from what I've seen on there, it's pretty good. You're into doing like Is it watercolor?
Yeah, just using watercolor. It's somewhat new. It's therapy. Simple as that,
You're doing like landscapes and, animal scenes in nature and so on.
I look at my photographs and I just tend to paint where I've been. It's a good way of remembering moments where I've been in time and the good times. And, it relaxes me. If I'm having a bad day, I'll just take myself somewhere and I'll just start painting. And then they're all postcards, postcard size paintings, and then I'll just forward them on to anybody. So anyone who's following me on my Facebook page interacts, I'll just say, "Hey, what's your address?" And I'll chuck it in the post then.
Yeah, they're really good. I was really impressed.
Thank you. Well, I'm a complete amateur. I ain't got a clue what I'm doing. I do wing it most days.
Huh? I'm surprised. You got some kind of talent because I could not do that.
I've got a lot of time on my hands right now. I think we all have, haven't we? So yeah, it's I'd say it's good, just a really good way of relaxing.
Paul, what's one or two books that you might recommend to somebody?
Well, I'm not a huge reader. It's been a while since I picked up a book, but there's a book that's just come out, and I'm keen to read it. It's called Becoming Coastal, and it's by Alex Zimmerman. And I met Alex in 2017 when we were kayaking. So me and my partner Kelly, were kayaking the Inside Passage from Alaska down to Vancouver Island. And Alex was a gentleman who built his own rowboat, and it was beautiful, absolutely stunning. And he's got 25 years of exploring that particular coastline. So I'm just keen to see and just remember and live it again through his experience of rowing and paddling down the Inside Passage, because rowing is something that I actually did enjoy that on the timber raft by it being slow. I'd love to build my own boat basically and do my own journey. So yeah, Becoming Coastal by Alex Zimmerman is a book that I'm about to order, and I'd like to see what happens there.
Well, Paul, where are your interests going to take you next?
There's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot to see out there. Scandinavia is a big draw. I spent a bit of time there. Me and Kelly kayaked the coastline back in 2013 from Oslo to Helsinki, and I'm keen to see more of the coastline, especially around Norway and internally as well. So I'm not a hiker, but I'd love to do some hiking there, long distance skiing, and then obviously back to North America again and discover more of there. I mean, I'd love to continue going down the Mississippi. There's a lot to achieve on that river. But I don't know, jump in my van and just disappear for a bit around Europe. There's tons of things. It's hard to narrow it down. That's the only issue, isn't it? How can people find you online if they want to learn more? Facebook's the best way of contacting me or finding me, and that's Paul Everitt. Going Solo Adventures by Paul Everitt, or through my website, which is www.going-solo.co.uk. I mean, that's the best way of communicating with me. Paul, thanks for coming on the show, sharing the story of the cross Canada, the bike car adventure, mostly across Canada. We talked about. Appreciate it, and best of luck to you in all your future adventures. Thank you for having me. It's my first podcast I've ever done, so I appreciate it. Much appreciated. Thanks again for listening. I'm now posting on Instagram, so be sure to follow me there. Just search for The Pursuit Zone. This episode was recorded on April 23rd, 2020. To send me an email, the address is paul@thepursuitzone.com. Or you can leave me a voice message at speakpipe.com/thepursuitzone. The best way to support the podcast is to subscribe and share it with your friends. For the subscription links, show notes, and more, visit thepursuitzone.com.